Once again, I want to welcome our keynote speaker to the stage today, Jimmy Pattison.
Is this thing on? There we go. Can you guys hear me in the back? Over there? Over there? We're good to go? Okay, I figured I'd have a conversation with Jimmy, just touching on some of the key points in his life, and get the conversation going, and then we'll open it up for questions at maybe the 20-minute mark or so. It sounds like, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, do we have 40 minutes for this?
Yes, we do.
40 minutes it is, okay.
I got it too, Chris.
God bless the Apple Watch. Jimmy, so good to be here with you. Thanks a lot for doing this.
You're more than welcome.
So let's, Duncan obviously, said what a lot of us feel, that you are one of the most notable business figures and philanthropists in the province, without a doubt. But I want to go back even further to your early years and when you were a child in Saskatchewan, just before you made it out here to BC, or maybe around the same time. What was your childhood like?
It was great. I came out, my mother and dad, I was an only child. They came from, my dad came out first, and then 3 months or so later, my dad had a friend who brought my mother and I out in a car, coupe, Chevrolet coupe. This is
I'm surprised you remember the make and model.
They do. And that was 1935, so that was a long time ago.
Wow.
And so my mother had been a school teacher in Luceland, Saskatchewan. How many people here are from Saskatchewan? Nobody.
Well, we did get a woo over here. One here, yeah.
Okay. Well, Saskatchewan doesn't have a big population, and the town that I was born in, called Luceland, today, population's close to 500, and that's up quite a bit since I've been there. So, anyway.
And obviously you made your way to Vancouver with the family. A lot of people here are, and because I live in East Van, we claim you as our own now. Now I'm a transplant from Calgary, as all Albertans are, just British Columbians in waiting. I made it out here. I'm in East Van. We claim you as our own. What was it like when you landed in East Van and your early days being in Vancouver?
Well, I remember we lived in an attic, my mother, dad, and I, at 49th, just west of Fraser. And the house is still there. I go by it every now and again, and we paid $2 a month rent. And that was furnished with heat and light.
Wow. Things have changed a little bit since back then. Unbelievable. I thought it was fascinating. You see what the province is dealing with right now, and obviously we have to acknowledge what's going on right now with flooding and atmospheric river after atmospheric river. What a lot of people might not know is a flood, the last major flood to hit the province actually changed the trajectory of your life in some ways back in 1948. And it was a great story that you told me about it. And maybe for the audience, describe how you were impacted back in 1948 when very similar conditions existed and there were washouts of the roads, highways, and rail lines. What were you doing and how did it all unfold?
Well, I'll try to be real quick on this. I was working for the CP Railway as a helper in the kitchen in the dining car. And the dining car went from here to Calgary and back. And those of you who know about the railways on the Fraser River, you got CP on one side, you got CN on the other. And I was working in the pantry as a pantryman which meant I made the salads and pretty well washed all the dishes, and that was about what I did. And I was going to university at the time, and I'd working my way through it. And as we got to, and the train I was on was Vancouver, Calgary, Vancouver, Calgary, Vancouver, Calgary, summer holidays, and I just started UBC. I'd been in my first year. Coming back after we left Lytton, the flood of '48 changed my life because the train couldn't get through to Chilliwack, and or Hope for that matter. We were on the west side of the river, and what you might not know is that when on a passenger train, if there's any kind of a problem with the railway, all of the passengers get breakfast, lunch, and dinner free.
That's a lot of salads to make.
So I was in the kitchen working solid because the train was not running. It was stalled on the west side of the tracks with the river, and that now I'm east of Hope. Those of you who know the geography, and it was west of Lytton. And we were there, and the train wasn't running. We couldn't get through. The highways were shut, and so this trip changed my life. And they got the train back. They crossed the creek and the rivers and so on to the bridges by engine power, but very slowly. And then they announced to me and to all of the crew that the train was going to go from British Columbia and run the route from Milwaukee from Minnesota to Lethbridge.
That's quite a change from Calgary to Vancouver.
Yeah. And so I decided I didn't want to do that. So I got off the train. I went to my boss and I said, "Look, I'm on this job as a summer job, but I don't want to spend it in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, or Milwaukee because I got a lot of friends and everything. And so, if you don't mind, I'll get off the train." So I did, and I got off the train at Lytton in the middle of the night by myself. Phoned my dad from a payphone at the station. My dad really went down my neck. Said, "Did it wrong? What was wrong with me? Wasn't I responsible with my job?" Anyway, I got a real dressing for getting off the train. Meantime, a train comes along going east, and it's a flat car. You know those trains that just have nothing on but are flat to carry barges and
Could be heavy equipment.
Containers and heavy equipment. So this train's going east towards Kamloops, and I jump on it. And there's no.
Wait. You jump on it like a hobo.
Like a hobo. Like the train is going, and I jump on this flat car. What I didn't understand is the railway was right on the Thompson River. And if you rolled off the railway, or the car, you would end up in the Thompson River. Those of you that know the Okanagan and been up and down there, the Fraser Canyon, will understand what I'm talking about. So I laid flat with my hands out on this car. I don't know what you even call these. Somebody in the room here, what do you call these flat cars for railways?
Flat. Let's go with flat car.
That
seems reasonable.
It's got no rails. It's got nothing. If you fall off, you're on the ground or you're in the river. And in this case, anyway, I was scared to death, but I was flat out, until we got into Kamloops. And then I jumped off the train, and I only knew one person in Kamloops, and it was Phil Ghilardi. Phil Ghilardi was a minister of a church in Kamloops. And so I get off, I asked somebody where Phil Ghilardi lived. They told me it wasn't far from the railway. So I walked up to the church, and of course it was closed. So, this is like 6:30 in the morning or so. And then there was a sign at the door that says, parsonage next door. So I go next door, knock on the door, and his wife, who I knew, Jenny Sandine, came from Minneapolis. She came to the door. What are you doing here, Jimmy? Explained what I was doing. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any money, and I didn't want to go to Minneapolis. And so she
didn't take it personally.
Phil Ghilardi to the door. He comes. He says, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go home, Phil." He said, "Okay." Jump in my car. He drives me out to the airport and talks to some people out there. And there's a plane coming in, just a single-engine plane with some equipment on it, going to Vancouver. And so Phil goes and talks to the pilot while he's filling up the gas in the plane. He says, "Will you take this kid with you to Vancouver?" So the pilot says, "Okay." So I get in the back of the pilot of the plane, and there's no seats or anything, just a bunch of equipment. I'm back sitting with the boxes and the equipment, and we come to Vancouver, and I come home, get to the airport, phone my dad, who is very unhappy with me, and I'm home. But anyway, he comes and gets me, and I come back to Vancouver. Now, I don't have a job for the summer. So I go up and down. I always like cars, and I'm around 18 years old or something, about that time, 18, something like that. And so I tried to get a job on a car lot up in. Those of you who have been here for quite a while, all the used car lots in Vancouver were on Kingsway, between Maine, pretty well on Victoria Drive, well, a little bit further out to Boundary Road. Nothing but used car lots. So I decided I'd like to get a job in a used car lot, washing at a car, selling cars or anything. So I go, I try. Nobody wants to hire me. And so I get on a streetcar to go home to my house, and it's going down Broadway, and I see a gas station with some cars beside it. I jump off of the streetcar, and I go to the man that was pumping gas. His name was Fred Richmond, and it was called Fred Richmond Motors. And beside the gas pumps, he had about 6 or 7 used cars. And I waited until he got through pumping the gas, and I said, "Mr. Richmond," I said, "do you need any help here? Because I'd like to sell cars." He says, "Son, I don't need anybody here to sell cars, but I need somebody here to wash cars." I said, "I'll take it." So I started at Canby and Broadway, and I got a job there, and I washed cars for. Then he came back and said, "Son, if there's nobody, we have one salesman here, name's Art Davenport. If he's not on the property or he's with a customer, I will allow you to speak to him, the customer." So I said, "Thank you." So I did that, and the first week I sold 3 cars.
And the rest is history.
And that changed my life.
Amazing.
And so I sold 3 cars, and then he said, "Well, look, why don't you quit washing the cars and come work for me full time?" So I did that. I quit washing cars, thanks to him. and he gave me a 39 Dodge to drive because if you're a salesman, you get a car to drive usually in the car business. So he gives me this 39 Dodge, and he says, oh, just one thing I didn't tell you. You can't work on the lot. You have to sell your cars from someplace else. The only place I had was the house, where my mother and dad lived. 3870 West 34th, we rented the house there. I go home with this car that I'm now my driver, and I talk to my mother, what should we do? My mother says, well, why don't we put an ad in the paper for the car you're driving? So she and I write the ad up. And so I phoned the ad into the Vancouver province, which was the big paper in those days. It wasn't the Sun, it was the province. Put it in, I'll be doggone if I don't sell the car within 24 hours. So anyway, with that, Mr. Richmond put me back on the used car lot full time. And from then on, I've been in the car business ever since.
Yes, you have. Wow. All because you didn't want to go to Minneapolis and make salads. So from the car, and of course the car business is the connection you have with Mel, right? When he walked into your office hoping to do a deal that was going to free up some capital for him to build a house that ended up being the very beginning of his career. So if you hadn't jumped off that train, can you, that's an awful lot of economic activity in the province that never happens. So it's a good thing you did. I know that you aspired to be in the car business, and certainly you built an empire doing that, but beyond that, it became grocery stores, it became media. I know that you've purchased some industrial farmland in Saskatchewan, a fishing fleet in Alaska. The diversification and breadth of your portfolio is legendary. Do you have a favorite child in all of those things?
Did your mother?
She says she didn't. Well, it's obviously been a very varied career and life for you. Is there one thing in your diversified portfolio that has been a particular challenge or particularly gratifying to get going and see return on investment?
Well, the car business has been our base. The car business has been our base, then we got into leasing. Car and truck leasing, and then from leasing we got into radio. And we got into television. And then from there we we bought the old Overweighty food chain, which had 2% market share in British Columbia, and we're not making money. And then from that we got into packaging, and then we got into Ripley's, believe it or not. Then we got into Guinness World Records in London, I bought that. And so today we're in 20 different businesses, different industries.
Right.
And in some, we don't amount to a hill of beans. On the other hand, a couple of them have really developed. Today, the biggest company that we're involved with is lumber. And in fact, I just got back from Sweden, where we have involved in 10 sawmills over in Sweden. And of course, we're pushing hard in the U.S. right now with sawmills and that type of thing. And we just bought a grocery chain in Salem, Oregon in the last 6 weeks. And so we're still pushing hard, but we're pushing more and more into the U.S.
Doesn't sound like you're slowing down, Jimmy.
Well, as I said, if you owe the banks a lot of money, you've got to keep running.
Nobody wants their banker calling for the wrong reasons. You have said, and we've done legions of stories at Global BC on you and your endeavors corporately. You have said that your most important asset is your reputation. It's none of the companies or portfolios that you run, but it's your reputation and, you know, Order of Canada, Order of BC, meeting kings and presidents and rubbing shoulders with some of the world's truly special people. What is it that has allowed you to keep your reputation solid?
Well, the reputation, we're talking about honesty. Is a lot, you have a lot of reputation for a lot of things, but we've always, as a matter of fact, about 6 blocks, 7 blocks from here, I grew up in a gospel mission, 40 East Hastings Street, and I worked, my dad was a down and outer and came to Vancouver from Saskatchewan. Not a down and outer because he didn't work, he was a pilot in the First World War and didn't adjust very well when he came back from the war. So he came and started his life over in Vancouver and brought my mother and I out, and we worked at 40 East Hastings at a Skid Row mission to help others. And I worked with my mother and dad till I was 26 years old, and then I struck out on my own, and I worked for Beaumac for 10 years here, and then I struck out on my own.
That's the sign we see behind the Kids Are Us sign on Broadway there, isn't it? That old car dealership.
Yeah, well, I built that sign. It was the largest freestanding sign in the world at the time we built it.
You don't do anything just regular. We established that. I could go on and hog your time all afternoon, but I know there's likely people in the audience who are dying to ask you some questions, and I think, Howard, you're going to be my Phil Donahue running around with the microphone. Is there anybody who has a question?
I'll start
Over here, yeah, for Jimmy Pattison. State your name, where you're from.
And now that Jimmy owns Guinness, he can give himself the Guinness Book of Records on that side.
That's right.
Thank you. Jamie Hooper from Vancouver. Mr. Pattison, thank you. I knew a gentleman that used to work for you years ago, and he said something very interesting to me, and so I just want to find out if it's true or not. He said, when Jimmy tells you he wants to meet you, he means for Egg McMuffins. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Is that your favorite?
No,
Egg? Yeah, not dinner. You're up at 5 a.m. every morning, aren't you?
No,
You're earlier.
I'm not. But if we have a meeting at 5 o'clock, I expect everybody to be there and on time.
Anybody want down here? Here.
Good to know.
In the corner here. Excuse me, right here.
Other one around the corner here? Did I hear? Okay, you got it, Howard.
Jimmy, pleasure to meet you again. My dad worked across the street washing cars from across the street from Bull McLean when you were there as well. So I grew up in your sort of legend. The question I have for you, when you built your car dealerships, what a legend, I read your biography, and the question I have is, when you fired the lowest producing salesperson in those days, and we thought, oh wow, that's terrible, but why did you do that? Would you do it today? I admire that, actually. I just want to know what your rationale for wanting to do that was.
Oh, easy. Sell more cars. No, we had 30, say 10, 12, 14, 20, we probably had 30, 35 salesmen all the time. And I had a policy of always firing the bottom salesman every month. Everybody understood. Bottom salesman, we fire. And then there's the odd exception. And I remember I hired a guy that was pumping gas at 41st and Granville. His name was Don Anderson. He used to fill my car up with gas anytime I was in that area. And I hired him, and he never sold a car for the first month. It's impossible. We'd spent tons of money advertising, and we had lots of traffic. And some months we'd sell 1,000 cars in a month, and have done that. Not every month, but we had those kind of big numbers. And this guy never sold a car, not 1 month. Second month, he never sold a car. The third month, he sold one. And he went on to be the top salesman I ever had.
Why did you give him a chance? Why did you keep him around? You
Because he
saw
was
something?
special, that's why.
Okay. Some people just are. That's
Some
good.
people, this guy was special. He couldn't figure out how to close a deal. Talk to people, do everything but close it. And so I took personal interest in him and tried to show him where he was, what he had to do to turn a prospect into a sale. And he caught on, and he went on to be absolutely the best salesman I ever had.
Is there a key to that, to closing the deal that you would share to us?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The closing, well, there's all kinds of people can show people merchandise, but then you got to ask for the order, and then you got to close the deal.
Sounds so simple when you say it like that. Okay, go Howard.
Anybody on this side? Anybody on this side want to ask a question?
There's one back there.
60-year-old guy, Brian Williams, Ashton Group. Everybody at our age, whatever, you're like, okay, we got to roll up our tent. We're going to Palm Springs. Not you. So, is there someone? And as I grow older, I'm like self-employed. I'm like, no, I don't think I want to quit either. Is there something in your tank that I was actually in British Properties on Saturday morning? I had to pick up some bags for asbestos renovation for my son. And I was there at 5 in the morning. I probably drove past your house and I thought, shit, I think I might pass Jimmy on the way by. But what gets you, what's the tiger that you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna keep rolling?
I really don't understand the question.
The question is what gets you up every day? Is it the win or is it the feeling in your heart?
Is my bank dead?
Highly motivational. It is highly motivational. How much do you owe, Jimmy? No, don't tell me. Don't tell me. All right. Yeah, a lot, yeah. Okay, right here.
Mr. Pattison, obviously in business there's huge hurdles that come up, whether they be interest rates in the early 80s and viruses that come up, whatever comes along. Do you prepare for that type of thing in the sense that do you have bank lines available to ensure that you're going to be weathering storms, or do you just go for it?
Oh no, we have bank lines. And my first loan was $40,000 at the Royal Bank at Canby and Broadway. The manager's name was Harold Nelson. And he loaned me $40,000. And the first time he sent it to the head office, they turned it down. The second time Harold Nelson sent it, he sort of dressed it up, the application for $40,000, and it got rejected the second time. The third time he called me, he says, Jimmy, I cannot get the Royal Bank downtown. His limit was $5,000, and I needed $40,000 to get started. And he said, if I can get an appointment with the big boss for British Columbia, I know that his line of credit, he can okay up to $100,000, and you need $40,000. I said, right. He said, if I can get an appointment with him, will you come? I said, absolutely. And he did. I went down, I met with the top man. He was English, and it was at the head office right here in Vancouver, Hastings in Georgia. And 2 days later, I told him my story, and they phoned me and said, Jimmy, you got your loan for $40,000. And I brought it with me, the original deal, and this woman over here has it with me right now, the original deal that I did at Canby and Broadway, where I got a loan for $40,000. My wife guaranteed it, I guaranteed it. I agreed to sell my house. I had $7,000 equity in it, and they gave me the loan. And it's right there. Please don't pass it around. I don't want to lose it.
Oh, yeah. Do you carry that around with you? Or?
No, but I thought somebody might ask this question, and that probably had.
That is amazing. Yeah, we're getting a shot there, and that's, you know, I guess leveraging equity in your home, but leveraging your own sort of character and knowing you knew you were going to pay that back. Yes.
Listen, I don't know anything else but leverage. You know, when you don't have any money, somebody's got to loan it to you, and that's usually a bank. But then the bank wants security, and they got to get paid back. And so all I've been doing is borrowing money and paying it back, borrowing more money and paying more money back, and I'm still doing it.
As long as you're paying it back, you're doing all right. That's amazing. How much time we got, Howard?
One or two more questions.
One or two more questions,
Anybody?
if there are any left. Okay, right down in front here or back there.
So I'm sure in the last few decades of your business experience, you must have had always a thought, how much does the luck help and how much does the hard work help? That's one question.
I'm sorry, I don't.
How much does luck play a part in what has happened to you and the success you've enjoyed, and how much is hard work?
Well, I can tell you, it's called timing. And it's luck or good timing, but I can tell you I've been very grateful for timing. And having time, and I've also done things wrong, also at the wrong time. And so timing is very important. And I think it's something that we deal with every single day on every decision that's significant is the timing right. Just like in the stock market. When do you want to buy? When do you want to go short? It's all timing.
Two more, here's our
Okay,
second
let's do
line.
it.
Jimmy, my question to you is, what made you decide to turn Glenn Clark into a capitalist?
He asked what I'm going to phrase it the way he did it, and I don't know if it's accurate. What made you turn Glenn Clark into a capitalist? He may have already been one. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know whether I've turned him into a capitalist or not. I gave him an opportunity, and he's done very well.
And Jimmy, last question. How much of an effect did Expo 86 play on British Columbia and Vancouver in your eyes?
Well, I can tell you the government, they have the numbers. That from Expo 86, for those of you who may not be familiar, was a World's Fair that the government put on. They asked me if I would run it, and I did. And the business that came to British Columbia, a lot of it from the States, a lot from California, right across from Montreal. We had a lot of people from Toronto, Ontario, a lot of people from the prairies and California. And there is a number they have, but I don't know what it is.
Finally, just before I wrap it up, BC obviously is experiencing one of the greatest challenges right now, the greatest natural disaster certainly that it has since the flood of 48. Sumas Prairie is devastated, the cradle of our farming industry in many ways. Transportation corridors are cut. I know that the supply chain issues are impacting your business. We have COVID to deal with. Vancouver is dealing with an opioid crisis and a housing crisis. I know you're not maybe going to have the answer to this, but based on your wisdom and experience, how do we get through it?
We will get through it. And we have to go, I don't think the whole world has gone through anything like we're going through right now. But I can tell you, if we keep our head down, do the right thing, long run, we'll be fine.
Hard work pays off for sure. Jimmy Pattison, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. And thank you, everybody, for taking part in this. I was honored to attend.
And thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Chris Galis, for coming down today to be a part of this.